Soul Searchers Unite. Today's guest is Kay Soul. She's a healing musician and a testament to the impact of perseverance. She's worked to create an intimate culture and body of musical work to bring hope and inspire others. She's a ray of sunshine, showing people that there's still beauty to be found, even when we're feeling down. Through her music and personal journey, she speaks to the common emotions that we all share, especially in times of struggle. In this podcast, we dive into her inspiration, the impact of her music, and the feelings and emotions she works to convey. Beyond that, we go into the meaning and personal story behind some of her most impactful songs. We first connected years ago in season 1 of this podcast, and it's been amazing to see just how far she's come in that short time. She really is such a delight, and I've always admired her personal perseverance, as she's gone through many personal struggles that, while difficult, she's used as fodder for her music in the hopes of spreading strength, love, and hope to others. We'll get to that conversation in just a moment, but first a quick note on what to look out for this week at SOS. On our Instagram, we'll be going through a list of meaningful artists to look out for in 2021. We'll go through many each day, and at the end of the week, we'll post a capstone article, so be sure to catch that too. With that, this is Kay Soul.
I'm a soul searcher. I'm always looking within, trying to evolve, trying to understand, and I like to use my music as a way of pouring out those feelings from within to also help other people in their soul searching process.
I love it. I love it. So how long have you been making music for?
Well, I've been making music, I think, my whole life. I mean, I can remember writing my first song like when I was 12, sitting on my porch. But I've been pursuing it seriously, like really, going hard at it for about the last 8 to 9 years.
It really feels like to me that you've been honing your production style, and you've really found more of your sound in this album here, which I gotta say, I think it's a really interesting and impressive leap from Hiding in Plain Sight even. And again, it's a very personal, raw, and I love how motivational it is. So congratulations on getting it done. And what when you put the album together, sort of what were you thinking? And can you walk us through how this went from sort of thought, concept, feeling to album?
I knew that I had gone through some of my own personal struggles since Hiding in Plain Sight, just trying to, just deal with some mental health measurements that I need to take for myself. And so I knew that I wanted this album to really be something that was really intimate and really, really showed kind of those broken pieces of myself that I was trying to work through in that time, but I wanted to do it from a place of hope, the other side of it. Like, you go through it so much, we talk about, but what can it look like on the other side? What can it feel like on the other side? So that was kind of my thought process as I was walking through, and I came upon this theme of broken and beautiful. And that we can still find beauty even when we're in these broken spaces that we find ourselves in.
Broken and beautiful. That's wonderful. So what was your songwriting process like here then? Was it something where you really were looking at these experiences that you've been going through and trying to externalize them? Or what was really your process for coming up with these songs and writing these songs?
I would say it started really with, sometimes I would get melodies, or I would hear different words, or, think about something and I may write it down or do a voice note or something like that. And then as I was sitting down, starting to just play with sounds, I just got on the internet and started thinking about different sounds and how I wanted to mesh things together. I would write to different stuff just to see how it felt. different tracks that I could find and record it at home just to see how it felt and if what I felt like I was trying to say through the song would come across. And I could make a decision then like, yeah, I do like this song, but not on this track so it was kind of that type of process.
Very interesting. And I guess this is along the lines of Broken and Beautiful, but there was a lot of inspirational messaging in this album. It really felt as though, as a listener anyway, that you're trying to help people come outside of these anxieties and sort of emerge from these hard times stronger. Was that your intention? I mean, why did you write this album?
I felt like that was my intention. I felt like in going through my own experiences that I knew that there were others who felt it the way that I felt it. I think we all experience our challenges in life and things differently, but there is some common thread of the emotion, the despair, the rejection, the loneliness, and I wanted to speak to those emotions. Like maybe how we got to these emotions is different, but how those emotions make us feel and what it does to us is, I believe, the same. And that's what I was trying to convey in my album, is this relatability to those emotions, but that we don't have to let them consume us, that we can, use them to gain strength to get through them in a different way.
Well, and I love that intentionality. I also think it's clear that this is very, truthful to you. And I know that always comes out. I think the intentionality behind music is something that I personally pay a lot of attention to. And I can tell that there's that authenticity to the intentionality behind the songs here. And so I think that's maybe one of the things that makes this so resonant. But I'd love to dive into just a few of the songs in this album, if you don't mind as well, because
Okay.
I would love to hear more of the backstory and the messages and the meanings behind some of these songs, if you would. So
Okay.
the first one is Silence. Okay, it was a really quick track, but I found it very intriguing. What did you mean here? What's the meaning behind this song?
Silence is about anyone who's been abused, whatever abuse that may be, whatever form that abuse may have been, and this idea of shame that brings upon this silence, and just pointing out that silence doesn't really serve the abused. It really does the opposite. It keeps you in that space. So it's encouraging you to speak up and tell that story, because that's really where you find that freedom.
So to move to a very different one that I thought was also quite intriguing. Can you tell me what's behind Classy Chicks? I love the energy and the meaning behind the song. I mean, what are you hoping to convey here? Because when you look at modern pop songs and the way that a lot of, especially females are being conveyed in like modern pop music, it's maybe a digression from what you're talking about here. So I just would love to hear what you were gunning for with this one.
And you know what? I'm not even surprised that you said that, because I intended for this record, I hope that it would spark some conversation. But I meant it kind of as like this flip track, if you will. I mean, the feel of it is very club, very something that you would hear where people would twerk and all of these things that have become very popular. But the message is kind of like, but look at what you're doing and what it's doing to your body and the things that we are putting value upon, and is it really worth it? And that's just the question. I don't, every person has to decide that for himself. But the way I ended it, my intention was to kind of point to those girls to speak to, you can still be a classy chick without doing all of these other things. So you decide if you're going to do it like this or like that.
So why do you think it's important to have the song be done in that melodic style? Because I that's what I find so interesting, where it's almost like, because I do think that a lot of songs often can be built for a purpose, right? So as you mentioned, it might be, the song's purpose might be club music, or something to party to or to dance to or even to twerk to or something like that. But it's interesting, I think, that you took that same style and you almost tried to like win it back with the message? Why do you think it's important that you presented it, you actually made it that kind of song musically?
Two things in my mind when I did it like that. One was because I believe for the audience that I really would be speaking to, that's what's gonna more so catch their ear. They're going to tap more into that fast, upbeat type of feel. Um, but two, I really almost wanted to show it presented as kind of like a satire of, you know, this, it being talking about something that really doesn't go to this, but only because society has said that. It's like, why can't we have music that still feels good and makes you want to party, but in a positive way? Because we used to, and we do still, but it's just not as highlighted as it once was.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. I mean, I think one of the things that's so interesting is it's, as we talk about a lot of these issues like in music and in society in general, it's hard because it's not always a problem if it doesn't exist. But it's just interesting to see why things aren't highlighted or what things are highlighted, for instance, and why are these things that are being talked about versus other things. And it does feel like a lot of the time the messaging behind songs becomes secondary to the feeling of the song, um, which may or may not be something that you want to make an intentional decision when listening to music. Because one of the things I think about is like I equate it to, you know, people want to buy food that's organic or fair trade, or people care about, you know, sort of what the process is behind the food that they go eat. But it's interesting too to see if a lot of times when we make the decision of what music to listen to, and this makes a lot of sense to me too because it is music and it is, you know, sound, that they often will perhaps just choose what sounds interesting to them, without regard necessarily for what's behind it. And that's not to say that's a bad decision, but I think it's very, very interesting that you sort of try to remind people of that decision that they're making, and then also remind them that they don't necessarily have to make that decision. So I thought that was a very interesting way of presenting that to people and reminding them that the music they listen to, they have a choice in the music they listen to as well. And they don't have to give up these activities if they want to be partying or whatever. Well, I guess in COVID you have to, but it's not like you have to give that up, but there's another way you can potentially go about it, and reinforcing the positivity behind that, I think that's wonderful. So yeah, what a interesting concept behind that song.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I hope it lands. That's always, I feel like you take a risk and you kind of hope that, it lands even a little bit, that someone can kind of pick up on it.
Yeah, well, I think it's obviously you never know what's going to catch on, what isn't going to catch on, everything else. But I do think that it is just nice to have a view of who you want to be as a person and as an artist, right? And it seems clear to me that you have this really interesting persona that you put forward as an artist. Is that the way that you're thinking about this? Is there, when you think about your career, is there a vision that you have for yourself beyond like recognition or anything else? Like as an artist that you want to be known as, is there something that you want to associate yourself with, and or impress upon your listeners in particular that they want when they think of K-Soul? What do you want them to be thinking about?
I want them to think about healing. I think that my music, I think that the calling on my life for my music is about healing, a musical therapy, if you will. So, I want people to think about K-Soul's music when they are having those internal questions, when they are feeling that anxiety, when they are feeling that loneliness, and be able to draw from it, even if it's just to get them through that moment.
It seems telling then that the album is called, In My Mind. And then, so along those lines, then, I mean, I find it very interesting that you begin the album with In My Feelings. What was the reasoning there, and why do you think that's been such a resonant song for your listeners?
When I first wrote that song, I think I was still kind of transitioning from still feeling in my feelings, but still, developing those skills that were helping me to better deal with those feelings. But I wanted to highlight that, and I wanted to do it uh, in a very honest and open type of way. And I felt like it began the story of what people would hear, so why don't we start from how this all began? I was deep in my feelings, and this is why. Here's some reasons why, and then we build from there.
So clearly music is something that you use to sort of analyze your sort of how you're feeling and then help other people heal, of course. But what role does music play in your life beyond just being a creator, for instance? What role does music play in your life now, as you, in terms of what do you go to music for? When you what not only as a creator but also as a consumer of music, what role does music play in your life?
Music for me is that safe space. Um, like you said, whether I'm creating it or I'm listening to it, it is that place of no judgment. It's a no judgment zone for me. I can listen to whomever I want for half. I want to listen to one song on repeat because that's just where I'm at. I can do that. And it's kind of that comfort for me, that companion that you can always go to, that's always right there with, you feel angry, you feel sad, you feel happy. It's always something there that you can pull from.
So who are you listening to now? Who's inspiring you just at the moment? It doesn't, no pressure. I always hate asking the question because everyone's like, well, there's so many artists that I love, but is there anyone in particular that you're playing their song all day, or anyone else that's inspiring you?
Oh, that's a good question. I listen to a lot of music. You know what? I'll say I'm liking some of the new stuff. I really like what Brandy did on B7. I mean, she's throwback, of course, but I do like her new album.
Yeah.
Um, I really like what Janae Aiko did with Chilombo, so I've been listening to that. I've listened to Tiana Taylor. So I've been tapping into some of the newer, I guess, alternative R&B, just to kind of see, if nothing else, too, like what's out there, what are people doing, what styles, how are they presenting their work. So yeah, but I'm still an old head though. So on any given day, I could be listening to Stevie Wonder.
Well, that's great too. I mean, I think sometimes, especially for someone who's a musician yourself or someone who's on the cutting edge of music, there's always this feeling that you always have to be listening to necessarily new music. But one of the things I love doing too in my own music consumption life is going back and looking at inspirations behind artists and other artists that came first and other artists that came before us, because they all have something to say. And especially when you make a song that's resonant, it's as relevant, decades later as it is now. And so oftentimes I'll find myself jumping between decades even of music and types of music. So nothing wrong with that. But it also is great too. There's so much good music coming out as well that it's really almost like difficult to figure out what the good stuff is too. So it's always something that worth considering too, is spending the time with the new songs and new artistry as well.
Absolutely.
So In My Mind Is Out. We now know the story of K-Soul, the healing musician. But where are you headed? What's next for you, Kay?
Gosh, that's the constant question in my mind. I'm hoping that I'm pushing the album. I'm planning to shoot a couple music videos to add some more visuals to it. I was hoping to tour. That was my initial plan. I'm not sure what that will look like in the COVID world. So I'm thinking about that from a streaming standpoint and, how that would plan out. But, just really trying to make an impact in some way or form, creatively or otherwise. And so I think I'm always just trying to figure out if there's more, if there's more that I should be adding to the music, doing with the music, but just wanting to have an impact and leave some type of legacy. So I guess that's the big answer, in addition to those smaller things.
I love it. I look forward to hearing you and following you and your growth. I mean, I love what you're doing. I love the intentionality. I love the authenticity, as I've said. And the touring issue is one that comes up over and over because it is on the back of and the front of every musician's minds. It's just a crappy reality right now is that touring is not really possible. And if it is possible, it's extremely weird and difficult. And so, yeah, I mean, I commend you. I think creatives are all being pinched in terms of their creativity and that they have to get even more creative in the ways that we're delivering content and media and interacting with fans and everything else. But I love what you're doing with your Soul Searchers. And I love the authenticity and thank you for putting out a great album.
I appreciate it, man. That means a lot to me. Seriously.
Well, how can everybody keep up with you too, at least through this time right now? Where are the best ways to engage with K-Soul?
They can reach me on my website, www.ksoulmusic.com. And from there, they can catch up with me on all social media. I'm most active on Instagram, which is at ksoulmusic. So if they want to reach out to me there, yeah, but I try to stay pretty active on social media. So either way, and I'll definitely respond.
Love it. Yeah. The accessibility I think is so important with artists today. And I think fans love it. And I think it's one of the reasons you've been able to congeal that Soul Searchers audience that loves you so much. So that's fabulous. Well, thanks again, Kay. And it's great to see you again. It was great to hear more about this album.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me and, let me share my artistry on your platform. I love what you guys do over there. And I like that you, focus in on that music with the message. I think that's real important. And it's just nice to see that, there are still people that listen to music for more than just the feel good of the beat.